Right. So midterm is over. It's time to move on to American culture. You may have noticed we only covered 3 chapters so far of 8. The eighth one usually doesn't. We usually don't make it that far. So we'll see how it goes. Um, as usual, in this cyber lecture, in this online version of the class, I want to talk to you about a couple things that don't um, appear in the book, which should be included in a future edition. There is a professor named Alan Galzo, who I've listened to deliver lectures on Audible many, many times. He identifies 5 principal. I think these just like the Reformation, or when we talk about big concepts, when we talk about the Reformation, or we talk about the early years of the sort of British Isles cultural development, just talking about 5 points or 6 points or whatever number, and sort of focusing on those ideas to begin with helps you study and helps you understand what the culture, what are the fundamental elements of the culture are. It doesn't mean that they are necessary or fixed or can't be changed, but I think it's helpful as sort of a basic sort of introduction to American culture, just to talk about what American culture is. It's a tough thing to talk about because it is as a nation, as a state, it's 50 states. In fact, it's more of a federation of states. It's going to be difficult to understand how it transforms into what it is today, from the original, Jamestown, Virginia colony, which manages to survive from about 1620 onward. Okay, so these things are not equal. They're just 5 ideals, as it says there, that sort of help you understand where American culture comes from and how it develops. Now, I myself am Canadian, and recently Canada and America have not agreed. During my lifetime, that's never been an issue. We, for hundreds of years, have generally gotten along, but that's not necessarily this is the status quo. This is the way things have been for a long time, hundreds of years, even from 1812, when we fought a war as a part of the British Empire against the Americans. Since then, we have not had any real serious conflict. So we've always sort of been part of the British sphere of culture, and increasingly part of the American culture. And so when I did my degree, most of what I studied was British literature, and the rest of it was American, and a tiny sliver was Canadian. The courses that are offered in Canadian universities are completely different now. There's a lot more Canadian stuff. When I was studying, my department in McMaster University in Canada was dominated by sort of expert British scholars. My professors, some of them were, graduated from Oxford, or were editors of famous journals like Shakespeare Quarterly or things like that. But they were all retiring, and I was the last. I think my group, my cohort, the uh, the early millennials, the kids who were born in the 80s, early 80s, and went to university. They got the last dose of real British focused stuff, and American focused stuff, and then Canadian literature and critical theory and cultural studies came in after. That's why really I'm teaching this course, because I ended up, by the end of my degree, sort of studying cultural studies more than traditional British or American literature content. So some of you may wonder, and some of you have asked me, why am I still here? Chungnam National University is the main reason. I got opportunities to. This textbook was originally based on a grant from the national government, which I managed to secure, and so I wrote the first edition because of the grant, and this class sort of evolved out of that. And of course, I have a family. I'm married and I have a family, so I stayed in Korea by choice, not because I couldn't go to another country and teach English literature somewhere else, although programs change over time, and there's a lot of global English and business English and stuff like that. But I think understanding American culture really ties into any sort of any direction you want to go. Linguistics, literature, business English, global English, international studies, doesn't matter. I think the reason that this course is good is even in Korean, it can really help you understand, what do you think the Korean cultural ideals are, or what do you think? I think we don't have that many international students this semester, but Uzbek or Turkish or Taiwanese or Chinese or Japanese ideals are. Like, what is important to your culture that, like, sort of, not that it's the essential elements of your culture, but what does the culture sort of, what drives the culture forward? That's what I'm trying to say. So ideal doesn't mean real. Ideal means like we hope that we can achieve these things. And whether you agree with a lot of countries are not getting along with United States American culture and the American president right now. We can't talk about that in detail. It's not a political course, but there are reasons for that, in favor and against, and I'll try to stay away from that. But I understand Donald Trump's position, where what he stands for economically, and what he stands for in terms of what the American population wants, is one thing, and what it might be the sort of traditional values of an American country that is against having a leader who is like a king or a dictator or something like that. That is not new. it's been a point of tension before in the United. So we're gonna talk about this, and I think we need to pay particular attention to the points in American history where those things became evident and that Americans decided that they needed to defend them. I think the first thing that an American would say, and probably most people from other countries would probably say, because we got these two perspectives. I'm not actually American, but what I perceive that Americans value is their freedom. And their idea of freedom might be different than mine. And that is something you can decide whether you respect that version of freedom. Is surprisingly, it's not as simple as just saying I'm free. You can't do whatever you want. You can't, even in America. I mean, guns are a good example of freedom. You're allowed to have a gun, but if you have a gun and you use it, and it makes a dangerous environment for other people, it kills other people, or it affects other people's behavior, like aren't you destroying other people's freedom? Or if you are a racist and you hate other people that are not like you, and you threaten them, and they're American too, and they look different than you, and they're different, they have different behavior or different, background or different ideas than you, and you have a problem and you threaten them, is that, are you taking away their freedom at the expense of your own freedom? Can you do whatever you want? Is that what freedom means? It can't work like that. You can't have 350 million people walking around doing whatever they want and have a society that functions. So you got, at a certain point, you gotta, make some rules, and those have to be respected. So freedom to be free, and freedom to operate within the understood limits of social behavior. Stretch the limits, free speech, but there's always going to be some point where your freedom and another person's freedom is going to have to stop at and compromise. And sometimes the system starts to resist that amount of freedom. I guess that's what I have to say. If you walk around with guns loaded, doing whatever you want, people would be robbing banks, people would be killing each other, and there would be no country. It would not exist. There would be no organized society. There would be no civilization. So freedom within a certain freedom to be free, though. And to be fair, in the beginning, like, you could literally run into the forest and you might live or die, eaten by a bear, or survive, or be attacked by native people, or integrate with a native tribe. There was sort of an outlet for that kind of behavior, more so than there would be now. Like, everything now is cameras and people being watched by everything. And the original American population really was free to do a lot of things. Free to live, free to die, free to run away, free to stay, free to, fight, or free to, behave how they wanted to be religious or not. Okay. So it's, although it seems like a very easy answer, it's a little bit more complicated than just saying, oh, everybody's free in America. It's a great country. America the free. Let's move there and we can do whatever we want. That's not reality. Popular government. Now, this is more a process of, we talked about the English Civil War and how the Puritans had a very strong sort of platform based on elite popular rule. Gradually, the United States went from having, the most important people, the most educated people, the wealthiest people being in absolute control and having all the votes, to expanding gradually to include more and more of the population as the perception of popular government started to spread and include more and more citizens who were literate. First of all, like reading was a good measure of whether somebody should vote or not, but originally it was property based. But ultimately, about 100 years ago, a little more than 100 years ago, women were included as well, because they were participating members of society who were fundamental in producing goods, equipment, products in World War One. And at the end of World War One, they, as a consequence, they were given the vote. So that sort of expanded the franchise of voting by a large amount, and then over the decades after the 1920s, then people from other countries, and African American voters, got included as well. So immigrants and other people, and recent citizens, and people who had no property, even homeless people, also got to express, to contribute to the decision making process of choosing government. Small role, but as we always say, don't complain if you didn't vote. Okay, exceptionalism. Yes, of course, Americans think they're special. They're different. They're the exception. Everybody else has some rules, and America has another, which, to a certain extent, looks like, from the outside, looks like you guys think you're better than us, or you're proud of yourselves, or you think you deserve to be treated differently. So what's up? Well, I mean, originally it was sort of a religious thing, the going back to the Armada and the Glorious Revolution and November 5th, the Guy Fawkes gunpowder plot and everything else. It seemed like that momentum, luck, or God, or destiny was making itself present and giving them the opportunity to move forward, as if it was the purpose of their presence in the United States, right? Manifest, but we'll talk about this later, but manifest destiny, that we are here, so therefore it is our right to do what we want, because it's evident, it's manifest. Manifest just means that you don't have to make it happen. It's just, it is. We are here, and we are here because of we should create the greatest civilization that has existed on Earth. Not that the Chinese civilization or the Roman civilization or the Indian or the Egyptian civilization were not, more impressive in their time, but just in the power and scale that we would eventually create this world superpower that nobody could resist. That's not what people were thinking. They were just thinking, I'm here, and I am here for a reason. My reason is to create a civilization that is superior to anything that's existed so far. And that turned into sort of a reasoning, like a casus belli, if you're a Roman. It's like, we better attack everybody else before they attack us. That's the Roman sort of approach to expansion, was that there are some big, states, there's some people, some tribes, some clans that are powerful and they're dangerous, and like, we better just attack them first and dominate them before they attack us and cause damage to us. So we'll just keep expanding in self-defense. It's one of the great ironies, I think, of the Roman Empire, is that it just turned into this gigantic, and endlessly expanding thing, just by allegedly conquering other nations, not nations, but other kingdoms or empires or groups of people or tribes or clans, in order to prevent being invaded themselves. Okay, so similarly, the American culture has its own justification for itself. Is like, we are here for a reason. We got blown in here. We'll talk about this later. Like, this is cultural studies, so we're going to bounce around in the timeline. We'll talk about Christopher Columbus next time, which we'll go before this ever happens. But once they're there and they're sort of secured and they start to expand, it's the expansion sort of builds on itself naturally. And that's where manifest destiny becomes the justification for doing it. The American dream, I think, is most closely related to these two things. Manifest destiny. I'm American, so I'm special, and I have a chance to do something that I can do in America that I can't do anywhere else. So that's the special, special status, or the special, situation you're in if you're American. How do you get there? You have to. You can't be Michael Jordan unless you get to go to school, unless people get to look at you and you can demonstrate your ability. In his case, it wasn't science or writing or business or chemistry. It was baseball and basketball. It was athletics. And he did demonstrate such an exceptional ability that he was able to move through the system and go to college in North Carolina and win the national championship, and then be drafted into the NBA. I think he was drafted third or fourth. It's a crazy year, whenever that year was. I was young. Was I even alive? 1980, 1980. I'm going to say 1984. I might have been 3 myself. Michael Jordan was not drafted first. He wasn't the first pick. The best basketball player ever. I think he was 4th. Hakeem Olajuwon, who was an incredibly good basketball player, was ahead of him. Patrick Ewing. Anyway, I don't think you care. But Michael Jordan was not the first pick. And that's, looking back, the most surprising thing about his career because he destroyed everybody. He was so good at basketball. And he's the wealthiest athlete, I think, ever. He has his own shoes. He has his own clothes. He has businesses, and he has cars, and he gambles. He does what he wants to do. Only in America could you build an empire like Michael Jordan did, and Michael Jackson as well. There's a few Michaels. There's a few MJs. Michael Jackson did a similar thing, except for with music. He just, demonstrated his exceptional talent and took control of his own career at a certain point and became the greatest musical talent on earth. In the 80s and 90s, and both those guys, people went crazy about them. They're often, needed a lot of security because they were so popular. It's similar to certain people now that you really never see them or get to touch them because there's too many people, protecting them. Which brings us, so I mean, education and opportunity are sort of in balance. Like the education system gives you the sort of platform to spring off of. You can go all the way through it to Harvard or Yale or Stanford, and you can become Bill Gates, or you can become a rocket scientist or whatever, or you can go through the system and become an athlete or a musician and not even finish high school, and it doesn't matter. But that's the American dream. Finally, we'll talk about experimentation, which it's essential to understanding America because, America itself is an experiment. And what's going on right now with Donald Trump's administration is a continuation of this experiment. Is democracy going to continue to develop the way it has, or is it going to change? And is the current form of the government the best way? It's not done changing, and it's under pressure, and it has to be decided by the American people whether they accept the changes or not. On the other side, the less serious political side, is innovation itself, discovering things. Tesla, the company Tesla, but Nikola Tesla originally, or Benjamin Franklin, or Thomas Edison, or Henry Ford, or any number of exceptional innovators, scientists. Einstein became American. Invention, innovation, experimentation, exploration, traveling into space, military technology, civilian technology, the internet, computers, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, business and experimentation sort of intersect at a certain point, producing results, varying results, positive and negative. So we have to talk about that too. So there's so many things to talk about. We have to go back in time and start with exploration. At the end of the book is space exploration, but at the beginning it's finding America in the first place, which would involve Christopher Columbus, the infamous Christophe Colomb from originally Genoa, sailing under the flag of Spain and discovering America, and leading to an English-based culture that takes over the continent, which nobody could have expected originally. The Spanish were the dominant culture, global culture, for the 100 years that followed his discovery. So, many things to talk about. We'll address those early days of Western exploration across the Atlantic Ocean on Thursday, and follow up on any questions people have about the midterm. Thank you for listening, and see you on Thursday.